This is the fourth and final part of notes for World War I for World History II. Talking about the Treaty of Versailles and peace after the war. Now, the Paris Peace Conference, the major players are going to include Georges Clemenceau from France, he's the Prime Minister of France, David Lloyd George, who's the Prime Minister of Great Britain, and Woodrow Wilson, the President of the United States. The Italians are also represented by Vittorio Orlando, and many other players are there, including the Germans and the Austrians. The Italians are there as well. And everybody's trying to figure out, how do we create a peace treaty after the World War I ended? So they're meeting in Paris. And the first problem is that there's a conflict of goals. Wilson has these ideas called the 14 points, which include this idea of the League of Nations, a international organization where you can get together and talk out your problems, and so that we can prevent war in the future. So people might punch each other over the table, but they're not going to be killing each other anymore. But the big problem is that the British and the French don't care about the 14 points or the League of Nations. They just want revenge on Germany. So let's actually add that. They don't really care so much about the Austrians. They're blaming the Germans for attacking France and Belgium and all of the havoc that has been created in Europe at this time. So it ends up being a flawed peace. Wilson writes the 14 points, his plan for lasting peace. They include freedom of the seas, so no more unrestricted submarine warfare. They include free trade, so no more tariffs or only trading with certain groups. No more secret treaties, what had created all of the alliances before the war, dragging everybody into the war and creating a much larger war than would have been previously. The idea of self-determination, so that each nation or group of people has the right to determine their own government themselves without any external or outside influence. And then this association of nations that he calls the United Nations. However, his plan was mostly rejected because of that conflict of goals, because of the desire for revenge from France and Great Britain. In class, we went through the 14 points and talked about the different parts of it. Here are some vocabulary words that we used for that, but we end up eventually with a treaty of peace, and we call this the Treaty of Versailles. And there are a couple parts or terms of the treaty that you need to know. First of all, it ends World War I, signed between the different nations. It establishes the League of Nations, this international organization. It has a war guilt clause where Germany has to accept that they are the ones that they're blamed for the war. And they also have to pay reparations, which is large amounts of money. Germany did not finish paying off the reparations from World War I until about 2009. So it took them a long, long time to pay it off, and they're still paying off World War II. Germany also has to give up colonies and land. They'll lose part of their country. And their military is very limited. They end up only being able to have about 100,000 soldiers, which is a very small military when you think that 1 million men were casualties in just one battle of World War I. So make sure you know that these 5 things are the terms of the treaty. Sometimes they're called the provisions of the treaty. Sometimes they're called the parts of the treaty. But they're all the things that have to happen because of the treaty. So Germany is going to lose land. The pink area over here is going to be ceded to Poland. They give it to Poland so that Poland can have access to the Baltic Sea and have a port, because they create Poland. They also take part of Russia to create Poland. And then this pink area over here by the Rhine River is going to become a demilitarized zone. So people still live there and work there and everything, and there are coal mines there, but the German military is not allowed to be in there. And it's going to be administered or run by the League of Nations until 1935, when a crazy guy with a mustache marches in with troops. We also have a bunch of other nations that are created from the from the Treaty of Versailles. Okay, the new nations you need to know are Poland, most importantly, and that's going to be very important for the start of World War II. Czechoslovakia is also created, so the Austria-Hungarian Empire is broken up, and the Czechoslovakian nation is created. So is Yugoslavia created from Austria-Hungary. Romania gets more land. Bulgaria gets more land. The nation of Serbia is extended. And then Finland is going to be created from Russia up here at the top. So make sure you have those Finland, Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia written in your notes. An easier way to look at it might be this. Okay, you can see the former empire of Austria-Hungary is this tannish color, and they get divided into Czechoslovakia, Austria-Hungary, so they're split up, and Yugoslavia. Okay, and Yugoslavia is the new nation down here. Poland comes from Russia, or the former Russian Empire, also known today as the Soviet Union. And Finland comes from the Soviet Union as well, as do Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. And then the Ottoman Empire is going to be broken up as well into Turkey, which was the former Ottoman home, and Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq as well. So Germany doesn't actually lose that much land. The Soviet Union loses a lot more, and Austria-Hungary is broken up as well. Now, in the Middle East, we get what we call the mandate system, that breaking up of the Ottoman Empire. And Britain and France are guaranteed the right to supervise these former Ottoman territories that are created: Syria, Iraq, Palestine, which becomes broken up later on into Jordan and Israel, and Lebanon. Let's add Lebanon in there. And this is from the result of secret negotiations between France and Britain. So instead of having self-determination and allowing the Middle East to create their own countries, the British and the French come in and draw the lines, just like they did in the Berlin Conference, dividing up Africa, and create this mandate system and these nations. Now today, if you look at the map, you can see how we have the Republic of Turkey, we have the mandate of Syria and the mandate of Lebanon, the mandate of Palestine, which becomes Israel and Jordan today, and the mandate of Iraq. The borders are still the same today. And the problem is that there are lots of different nations, groups with common cultures in this area that are not represented by these borders, just like in Africa. So up here in the north of Iraq and southeast of Turkey, there's a group called the Kurds, who are an independent nation and have wanted to become an independent country of their own, so have their own government, not be under the government of Turkey, Syria, or Iraq. And in the 1990s, they became victims of an almost genocide, but of ruthless terror by Saddam Hussein, who did not like them. And so as the U.S. kind of went in and tried to help out to free Iraq from Saddam Hussein, the Kurds were one of our big helpers. Some of them are Christian, not Muslim. And so, again, Europe draws lines for countries without recognizing the actual nations that are created within. So that's going to be another big problem that leads up to the problems and helps explain the problems today. Okay, the British create Palestine, and then in the 1940s, after World War II, they're going to create Israel out of this area and move a lot of the refugees after the Holocaust there and create the only Jewish state in the world. That's going to be a problem because there are a lot of people living there who are Muslim, who are Palestinians, who wanted it to be their own country as well. And so that's a fight that's still happening today. And President Obama was just recently this is 2013, went on a visit to Israel to talk with them about a peace process between the Palestinians and the Israelis. So it still affects us today. What happened after World War I is still affecting us today. Kind of crazy to think about. Now, the United States does not sign the Treaty of Versailles. They reject the Treaty of Versailles. So President Wilson brings it back. He's all happy because it includes the League of Nations, and Congress refuses to sign it because Congress signs all of the treaties, not the president. And the reason they reject it is because it would have made us join the League of Nations. And the League of Nations had a part of it that said that the League of Nations is the group that would declare war. Now, in the United States, Congress has the ability to declare war. And so if we join the League of Nations, Congress would lose the ability to declare war themselves. And so our hands would be tied by the foreign nations that are involved in the League of Nations. Because if France and Britain decide to go to war and Japan decide to go to war, then we have to get involved because of the League of Nations. We wouldn't be able to determine for ourselves which wars to get involved in or not. So we reject the Treaty of Versailles. We actually end up signing a separate peace treaty with the Germans and the Austrians. And so we actually end up officially being at war with them. We don't fight them after 1918, but we don't officially end war until 1920 with them, which is kind of crazy to think about. So there are a bunch of problems with the treaty, including German humiliation. Okay, the German country is humiliated. They're made to take all of the blame for the war, and they didn't even start it. Technically, Austria and Serbia started it. So that's going to be a big problem and going to lead to the Germans wanting revenge after the treaty. The Russians were completely excluded from the treaty process, and they had to give up part of their country as a result, and they're kind of, standing there saying, what? So the Russians are not happy about this. And then all of those colonial territories of France and Britain and Germany who wanted to get independence after the war. And they said, hey, we sent soldiers and we sent troops and we sent supplies and we helped pay for the war, and yet you're not going to help us out and turn around and give us independence. They're not so happy about that. So all of these problems with the treaty lead to World War II. Okay, Germany's humiliated, and that's going to cause them to rebuild their military and try and restore their honor and get revenge for the Treaty of Versailles, leading into World War II. So that ends the notes for World War I.